I'm Richard Rudd. I'm founder of a system called the Gene Keys, a tool for self-development and spiritual growth and self-illumination. And I'm a poet and a writer and a father and a gardener, and I'll stop there. I carve wooden spoons as well. Well, my central pillar is called contemplation. I call it contemplation, the art of contemplation. And I think it's something that many people already do, but I'm doing my best to put a name to it because it contains many other things. So it might contain meditation, and it's a practice and a discipline. And if you do it over and over again, and I also use prayers that I do myself. It's private practice, but I share it openly, and it creates a really deep, lasting peace the more you do it. So it's now something that I can just drop right into, and then it carries on throughout my day, and it carries on in pauses. And so I also, in my teachings, I talk a lot about pausing, that we are so busy in our lives, and we move from one thing to the next, to the next, to the next, and we don't remember easily to pause. And pausing not just between tasks, but sometimes even in the middle of a task. And so that's another practice that I use a lot, and it helps create like this string of pearls throughout my days, which are these moments of quiet, and they can be very short, 2-3 minutes. And the peace carries on growing in those moments, and then it begins to impregnate even the busier moments as well, where I'm active. So I hope that answers a little bit of the question. There's an inner way and there's an outer way. I think we're familiar with the outer way, so maybe I won't address that, because activism and that we know about that story. The inner way, which I think the outer way rests upon and is really important, is we find trauma deep inside ourselves, inside the cells of our body and our bones. And that it's the trauma, genetic trauma from our ancestry. It's the soul trauma of our journey. It's of perhaps our past lives, and we carry all that karma inside us. And the deeper you go into that reservoir of pain inside, and the more you learn to transform it through your outer life, through relationships especially, because that's where it shows up quickest, then the deeper you go into the well, and eventually you get to a place where you start to reach collective trauma, which the body also holds. And this is a deeper kind of karma, so it has a different feel to it. It doesn't sometimes feel like it's connected to your life. So you can go deeper and deeper, and you can work on the whole by doing work on yourself. But in order to get to that level of depth, it takes many years of committed self-love. Essentially, that's what it is. Self-love, self-forgiveness, deep, deep gentleness towards yourself. It's one of the hardest things for humans. So for me, saving the world begins with gentleness towards yourself. And I think it probably ends there as well. When you ask that question, in my consciousness, my wife's voice appears, and she's a very down-to-earth woman, and we've been married a long time, many years, and she carries a strong truth and honesty about the ordinariness of living. And for me, and this is my personal thing, that the descent of the feminine is less about the kind of goddess in a floaty veil, if you know what I mean by that, and more about practicalities. And so, what the feminine is, as I understand, the great gift of the feminine is to get things done, is to get things changed, and to get past the trauma and start actually addressing real issues that affect real people, children, people in poverty, suffering everywhere. So it's less about the kind of self-empowerment and more about activism, in the sense of that's what I see this divine feminine about. Like in my family business, which is a wine and spirit business, it was a very traditionally male business. All the top roles are women. It's not deliberate either. It just happened that way. They were the best people for the roles, and so they ended up. And so this incredible business has exceeded all expectations through having those women in those positions, because they applied the gifts and skills of women, especially empathy, in the relationships. And immediately this non-hierarchical business started to appear. And communication was clearer, and flow, and purpose, and all these different things that were hidden beneath the surface in a previously male-led organization that was doing its best. The men were doing their best with the skills they had. It's not like I could blame them. But the feminine brings this new perspective. So I think, especially in things like business, the male and female working together and listening to each other and cooperating, it's not about women being in charge. It's just about us recognizing what is that female gift that's been lacking from our culture. Especially it's about listening, but above all, I think it's about doing. It's about actually doing the change. So not talking about it all the time, although that's important, getting down to it and getting it done. I think that's, for me, that's what my wife would say. So I called out men in one talk for our fear of committing. Because I keep meeting young women, especially who are heartbroken by male men that are for one reason or another unable to stay the course of the relationship. Maybe there's a child involved, and they can't hang on in there. And so I think what the masculine principle is learning is, it's learning what freedom really is. It's about freedom. For men, I can only speak for myself as a man. It's like I sought for freedom, and I thought it was outside, and I thought it was about, I want to be free to do whatever I want to have that freedom to go wherever I want in the world and roam and explore and sniff everything and that. And yet I learned that freedom has nuance in it, and it requires boundaries, and it requires commitment, serious commitment. It requires deep patience, and it comes back to gentleness. It takes time, so I think the masculine is learning slowly, but hopefully it'll speed up, this lesson of the magic, the freedom that lies behind the veil of commitment. So the more that the male can support the female and stay with it, stay with the sticky bits, stay with the difficulties, stay with the trauma, which is ours after all, it's shared, we both have it, then the more powerful that transformation between male and female becomes. And I think what I've noticed anyway in my life is that then if and I'm talking about let's talk about male-female poles, so that it doesn't have to be kidnapped by a gender story. Let's just say yin yang, but the yin force in the relationship then feels absolutely held and safe, and that can be in both the male and the female. And when it feels safe, it blossoms, and that fire comes alive in the relationship, and it's in both. But it requires that holding pattern. It requires that deep commitment, year after year after year after year. Maybe you split up, maybe you get back together, however it works for you, but you stay the course. And I think that's one of the lessons that I'm going to increasingly be sharing with men, to really understand that the true freedom that we're looking for, the male is looking for anyway, and perhaps the female as well, is on the inside. It's really on the inside. And we make that mistake sometimes of looking for it out there. Understandable mistake. Well, other than having a rest, I'm looking forward to seeing the next generations speeding up more and more, which they are. And I'm really looking forward to, I call this group of beings in the world right now that are awakening the catalysts, and I look forward to all those catalysts in all cultures who are awakening and activating their highest purpose to help and serve Gaia and all of us. I'm looking forward to seeing how their stories get interwoven together. So in my life, I notice I'm being guided through my life journey to meet all kinds of new people all the time, like at this festival. Made so many connections, and I can guarantee everyone else who's been here has made so many high frequency connections that will open doors into new pathways of collaboration. And I think collaboration is key. We've been working a lot in isolation, and I think as we begin to collaborate and share resources and network our intelligence and our genius, then we start to activate this, I guess what I call the future human. The future human is a collective consciousness. And that's what I'm really interested and curious and excited to see, that future human, that collective human awareness system operating and expanding and spreading into the gene pools of humanity and doing the healing work wherever it appears. It's going to appear at all levels. It is already appearing at all levels of society and all cultures. It's non-denominational, the awakening. Awakening doesn't choose gender or culture. It just moves in its own spontaneous, beautiful, collective synarchy. That's what I call it, a synarchy, a self-organizing intelligence that brings humans together in fractal groupings of higher purpose to perform healing deeds on the behalf of the whole, and that's so that's an incredible pattern and a dharma to watch at work in the world, and it's going to save the world, and because it's the spirit of Gaia herself working through us. That is, we're not separate from Gaia. We're not doing this to Gaia. We are part of Gaia, and Gaia is doing this through us, and so Gaia is going to take care of herself through us, and so because of that, we can be very hopeful, more than hopeful. We can be sure that we're going to achieve an incredible union one day. So yeah, that's something to look forward to. If Gaia wanted to create a new human, what would she do? One of the things she'd do is she would multiply as many humans as possible to proliferate, so that she has the widest genetic pool to choose from, so that she can select the very best components before she starts to trim it all down, and then she comes up with this new quintessence of all the best things in humanity, like a new kind of version. So she proliferates, and then she culls. And how do you cull? You cull through crisis, through change, through, and then so population decrease, comes, and then you end up with a new form that starts to come in, that can house a different kind of level of consciousness. And for that kind of mutation in the gene pool, and Zach might speak to this, like you require heat for mutation. The body needs heat, so the planet needs to get hotter. You need a certain amount of turmoil, because you need the collective psyche of humanity to reach a fever pitch, so that a kind of transmutation can occur, a birth, a shock wave, deep enough because you gotta go to a whole new level. If you're going to shift to a whole new level of consciousness, you don't do that by like little degrees. It has to happen suddenly, a phase shift, So that's kind of how it works. So when you're looking from a meta level, you actually see the perfection of what's happening, even though it's horrific from a view of I'm down here in it. But if you were to look from the finished product and looking back through history, through the through future, you go, we had to go through that. You see what I mean? Because if you have a stingy one incarnation view of life, like if you see a stingy God that only gives you one life, yeah, that's really shit. That's a shit deal. It's like, that would be a really stingy God. I don't see, when I look out here, a stingy God. But yeah, we don't always remember those things. I think as we go deeper in our spiritual journeys, those things come back to us. Those realizations that we're a multi-generational, multi-incarnational, multi-dimensional, timeless entities traveling through galactic vehicles in timelessness.